What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? John Middlekauff, 3 and Out Podcast. You guys know the drill. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss a thing. We're going live after every Sunday night game, Monday night game, Thursday night game. Banging out mailbags at John Middlekauff, Instagram. This is a mailbag. If you hear people banging in the background, it's the roofers. It's why my Fugazi a couple weeks ago, I said you better be very careful when you buy something. You know, it's nothing like being a renter. You got an issue, you just place a call. Well, when I bought this house, it needed a new roof, put it off for a couple years, and you have historic rainfalls, you realize, I don't think I can put this off anymore. So I had to do it sooner or later, definitely before we have a kid. So that will be the noise if you hear anything in the background. Again, mailbag at John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs. Start with Jack. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. After how the Bears looked against a defense that has shut down both the Lions and the Packers in the past month, I'm starting to believe the Bears can make a run. No matter how many times it burnt me in the past, I think this upcoming game at Green Bay is the hardest game left on the schedule for the Bears, with the game in San Francisco being the second hardest. And if they win, I can see them winning the rest of their games. My question, do you think there is a world where we can actually get the number one seed? And if they do, does the style of football they play, strong run game, good third down pass game, and a takeaway defense translate to the playoffs? How far do you think they can go if the playoffs run through Soldier Field? Well, I think the division will be, like you said, in the next month, because this game is not must win. But if you lose this game, I do think you would have to win the next two. Obviously, the Browns. Take care of the Packers at home. And then if you go to the Niners and win, there's a chance that Lions game, Detroit's just done. Like, they're completely out of the playoffs, and that game is meaningless to them. So, listen, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on this game. It's the Packers, this historic rivalry, which has really been one-sided. But to me, the game is much more about the home game against the Packers. Like, if you go to Green Bay, even if you lose by 10, it's like, yeah, you went to Green Bay and lost. But can you beat them at home? And I think you can. You know, the 49er game, the 49ers defense is a shell unit because of all the injuries. Bosa, Fred Warner, Mykel Williams. I mean, they're playing Cleveland Farrell, who was a practice squad level player earlier this season. Again, he's done an admirable job. But the way you guys play, that is a very winnable game. Again, they're kind of like the Spider-Man meme, the Niners and the Bears, in terms of the way they want to play. Very fascinated, these two games against the Packers, you know, how you guys look against their defense. You know, their strength is that pass rush. You know, is Ben Johnson just going to run it 50 times, you know, a game, which I would imagine he's going to try. But your game translates to the playoffs. Anytime you have an elite run game and you're playing playoff games, whether it's in Chicago, even if you don't win the division and the Packers do, you could go to Green Bay and win, given the way you play. You could go to Seattle and win. San Francisco probably be the 7 or 6 seed, so you wouldn't have to do that. But go to the Rams and win. Like, your stuff's going to translate. So, you know, your first-round game, if you're the 5 seed, would probably be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if you're the 1 seed, would obviously you get a bye, which is pretty crazy. It's honestly nuts we're even having this conversation. But I also think it's kind of unneeded. We'll know a lot by the time that game, I guess TBD, they have a flex schedule ability for it. So I'm fascinated. If you win 2 of the next 3 games and you are, what's your record right now? 9-3. So if you are 11-4 going into that 49er game, assuming the 49ers would be, they have a bye this week, then they play the Titans. So let's give them a win there. That would be 10-4 at Indy. I don't want to get too confident, but I would say Indy's in a little bit of trouble because just injuries. Sauce Gardner now is week to week. Obviously, their quarterback is banged up. They just haven't been playing as well. So if both teams are 11-4 in that game, that would be pretty nuts. So it's a great time to be a Bears fan. You should be very excited. I'm happy to be wrong. Yeah, I mean, your coach is just fantastic. I'm curious as to who you think will win the Super Bowl this year. To my eyes, there are about 10 very good teams in the NFL, but the gap between them and the 5-6 good ones, there are 10 very good teams. Okay, and then the gap between the next 5 isn't that big. Like if I told you the 49ers beat the Seahawks in their last game, you wouldn't be shocked. That if the Bengals won out and someone won their division, they are only 2 games behind with some divisional games upcoming. No one would be shocked either. It seems that any team could beat any team on a given weekend. I totally agree. To my mind, I would just trust the people who have been to the dance before. For example, I trust Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers to at least be consistent in the playoffs. I don't know what the version of the Eagles or the Lions I would be getting in a game. In the AFC, if Buffalo is in, do I trust Bo Nix and the Broncos or the Jags and Trevor Lawrence or Josh Allen and Sean McDermott? While I agree, I do think health plays a pretty big role, once everyone is somewhat even, right? If we assume, if you look at the playoffs right now in the standings in the NFC, we know it's the Bears, the Packers, Seattle, the Rams, the Niners, Tampa, and Philly. All of those teams could beat each other. Now, I do think the 49ers are an example of, like, their defense, it's going to be difficult. The margin for error on their offense would be slim to none. Like, they couldn't overcome interception and a fumble because their defense is going to struggle to stop people, right? Now, if you're playing the Eagles, what if their offense is terrible, right? If you're playing the Rams and Stafford has one of his games, though he feels like he plays pretty well against the 49ers, I just think you have to look at it very matchup-based and health-wise. Like what the Bills just did against the Steelers on Sunday afternoon. Are they winning playoff games that are 2 starting tackles? I have a hard time thinking that. But I also watched Deion Dawkins, their starting left tackle, play against the Houston Texans, and he could barely move. So it's like, are you better off with a guy who's fully healthy, even if he's clearly a backup, over a guy who's your starter that's 60%? Yeah, I mean, these are the arguments. I also think momentum matters, like how you've been playing. The 49ers have been winning a lot of games, right? The Bears have been really, really hot. I mean, the Bears have won 5 straight games. The Packers now have won 3 straight games. They have momentum, like how you're playing going into the playoffs. The Rams last year had a lot of momentum going into the playoffs. The Broncos, they've won 9 straight games. Same with the New England Patriots. Like, you win 9 straight games, you're playing at a really, really high level. I'm recording this before the Monday night game. The Colts, like, if they limp in as the 6 or 7 seed, like, I don't have that much faith in them. So to me, it matters how you're playing, how healthy you are, and then I totally agree. Like, having Kyle Shanahan, having Sean McVay, having Vrabel and Sean Payton, like, there's a big advantage. Like, Ben Johnson's coached a lot of playoff games. I know he hasn't been the head coach, but he's been involved in a lot of them as a coordinator. Kevin Patula, he's never called plays before in his life before this year. So what's he going to be like in a playoff game? Seattle's kind of interesting. Mike's never been a head coach for a playoff team. Kubiak never called plays for a playoff team. Like, those are things to watch. Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Ben Johnson, whether as an assistant or a head coach, like, they've been involved in a lot. I actually think the coaching in the NFC, even Mike McDonald was the DC for the Ravens. Obviously, the Packers, the Niners, Sirianni and Fangio, Sean McVay, Ben Johnson. Like, these guys, they've coached a lot of games. Meanwhile, you look at the AFC, you got Sean Payton, who's, Super Bowl winning coached a lot of playoff games. You got Vrabel and Josh McDaniels, that they've been around the block. Liam Coen would, that would be a little bit of a, if they are either win the division or a wild card. The Ravens would be a team that would make you a little nervous in a playoff environment. The Chargers just have so many injuries. The Colts, those guys have never coached. Like, I guess, as assistant coaches they have, but Shane Steichen, since he's been there, they haven't been in the playoffs. When's the last time Chris Ballard went to the playoffs? So I'm with you on the Bills. They have a pretty big advantage. I think the Bills would be the sleeper in the AFC. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is the only legal sportsbook for whenever you're in Florida. It's also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado. Coming soon to more states, too. Sign up today and you could win $150 in bonus bets. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you not only get your winnings, but you also get $150 in extra bonus bets. Plus, Hard Rock Bet offers new promos daily, plus big legendary reward drops every single Thursday. It's like gifts under the tree. So whenever you're listening, just open the app up and check out what you've got waiting for you. Download the Hard Rock Bet now and make your first deposit. John, I've noticed continued references to Kiffin's sobriety and weight loss as evidence to his changed personality. In 12-step circles, we often consider drinking as a symptom of a person's overall alcoholism, self-centeredness, or general narcissism. Stop drinking is the starting point at which a person can begin to affect a meaningful personality shift, often through their improved treatment of others, and amend for the past transgressions. Clearly, Lane has not progressed to that and level that he probably never will. To me, this reinvented image is entirely superficial, and he's just the same guy he's been with a slightly different haircut. I do think it's pretty evident by his body that he stopped drinking. Definitely at the level in which he was. Is the man completely sober? I mean, truly only he knows that. But it's clear his lifestyle changed. But I'm with you. Just because you change a lifestyle doesn't mean it changes your mentality. I'm going to talk about this on the main podcast. I'm recording this during the day. I'll do it in after we talk about the Monday Night Football game. There is a level of selfishness I think you have to have in most industries to be successful. So clearly, I think we'd all agree, even in a tough situation to handle, and typically when a coach leaves a program, especially a stepping stone job, which historically Ole Miss has kind of always been, for LSU, if one program is doing really well and the other program is down, there is this, you're leaving us for them, even though we're better than them right now, though they've been better than us historically. There's like this little brother syndrome, so that the fans get involved in. There's always, it feels like, a little shadiness with the way it's handled. And people just, offended's the wrong word, but just, emotions run really, really high. But historically, like, Nick Saban's left multiple jobs. He left Michigan State for LSU, Miami from LSU, and then he left Miami to go coach Alabama. And he almost left Alabama to coach for the University of Texas. So I think a lot of times, like, didn't Urban Meyer, Bowling Green to Utah to Florida, kind of quit on Florida and then went to Ohio State. I just think the profession is naturally more nomadic than what most of us do. Now, we love, and I know, speaking for myself, like, I love football. I don't have that much in common with just, like, every couple years picking up and leaving. Though, relative to most people I've known, I've lived all over the country, right? I've lived in California. I've lived now in Arizona. I lived in Kansas City for a little bit. I lived in Philadelphia. I've been nomadic in my pursuit of some quote-unquote professional dream. Now, I also think when you're a public figure like him, everything gets dissected. I'm totally with you, though. The E60 video that he did with ESPN, which I enjoyed, like, there was a, there was a reason that was produced, right? It was basically like the bat signal to the other programs. I'm a changed man. What you know about me, because people talk, is no longer the case. And the Lord, the no more booze, my family, like, these things are important to me now where they used to not be. And he wanted everyone to know. Now, you could say that's self-serving. Like, that's not what the reason why someone should get sober or gravitate toward God is, to tell everyone in your profession that you've done that. But that was the only way he was going to get hired. Now, I think the question mark is, moving forward, is it going to be quiet? And when I say quiet, obviously from a recruiting standpoint, from a hype standpoint, he's going to do things. But like, does he find himself in controversy in LSU? And I'm not talking like a recruiting controversy. I'm talking legitimate, like, whoa, that's not a great look. Because we've seen that with people over the years in the SEC. From Petrino banging the strength coach's wife to Hugh Freeze and all the hookers and the strippers. Like, if you are not winning, and you are last year Lane went 9-3, 5 years in, with the expectation of a roster that could win the national championship. And they went 9-3, and I was like, oh, no big deal. Cool. We'll get you more money, and we'll get another team the next year. And this year, clearly they didn't think they were going to be this good, but like they were very supportive. 9-3. I'd even say a couple years at 8-4 would not be the end of the world there. As long as you have the occasional 10 or 11 win season that he just had, and everyone's, jumping for joy. That's not how it's going to be tolerated at LSU. It's just not. Look at Kalen at Alabama. Rocky season, year one, which players leave left and right. I mean, his starting quarterback and his starting star safety immediately go to Ohio State. So Nick Saban retires. The transfer portal and everything, I'm pretty sure the timing, I'm not as dialed in as some of you that follow it closer than I do, but it was after the national championship, so it was late in the cycle. And he went 9-4, which obviously for Alabama standards might as well be a 2-win season. Okay, we'll give you somewhat of a pass. You get your boy Ryan Grubb back from Seattle. Anything less than the playoff berth this year is a disaster, and we might think about firing you. It's like, well, John, they don't have the money. Well, we'll fucking find it. And that game against Auburn, you felt like he was coaching for his job. That's year two. You'd be like, well, he's following Saban. Well, yeah, I'm at LSU where the expectation I'm giving you $100 million. Like, the reason Brian Kelly was shoved out was obviously because he just wasn't winning. And his program clearly wasn't close to, Bama or Georgia, but like Ole Miss was in a different world. He was losing to teams, like he simply was not as good as teams that he's expected to be better than. And he didn't make the playoffs, and he didn't make it till the end of year 4. Now, obviously being an asshole and that type of stuff made it an easy decision. I just think you better win. And, the sobriety, the hot yoga, the living, I guess, with your ex-wife, like that is, it was important to let everyone know that. But now no one cares. We're not teaching life lessons here. We're trying to win natties. And can you get us closer to that? If you can, no one will care about any of your indiscretions. If you pick back up the bottle, if you started running around your wife again, no one would care. Not a soul. But if you have an 8-4 year, it'll be a problem. Full stop. Now, you could win a national championship and then have an 8-4 year, and people will let up on you a little bit. But the expectations, the one thing I will say about Ryan Day, who you'd be like, Middlekauff, I owe him an apology. He's kicking ass and taking names. His program is elite right now. And hiring of Patricia, that was a big time hire. And clearly the not beating Michigan thing was a big deal. He knew it. He had to get it done, and they just kicked their ass. But, like, you start rattling off national championships, like if they win it this year again, you start going to Final Fours. Like, the standard's really, really high there, and he's just answering the bell year in, year out. It's like a bunch of dudes in the NFL. We're top 5 every year. We're competing to win the Natty. We have one of the best teams clearly in the country every single year. But that's the expectation. Like, anything less than that, he would get fired. He was so good outside of Michigan for a couple years that couldn't really stick to him. But if last year he would have lost in the first round, it would have been a much bigger problem because the expectations are just outrageous. And I would say you could make the argument that in 2026, the highest expectations in the country are number 1, Ohio State, because they now are consistently the highest expectations. I even think Georgia's in a weird way have lowered because of the transfer portal. It's like, yeah, probably never going to get as good as like 22 and 23 or 21, whatever they won back-to-backs. As long as we're in the mix, Final Fours, and if Kirby can win another one, like their last championship was 1980. Like I saw Mark Richt for 15 years, be a top 20, 15, 10-ish team. Like what Kirby's done, like he's a made man now. And as long as every year they're in the SEC title competition in the playoffs, it's all good. That's not the case with Ohio State. And I don't think that's going to be the case with LSU. But also, that's what I think drove Lane to go there. Part of in certain industries, when it's pretty clear Lane's a pretty ambitious person. You kind of are driven to the craziness. It's like I think a lot of people, and listen, I sometimes I question what would I do. Like, why would you leave Ole Miss? You got a great gig. They're paying you a ton of money. They're very supportive, and you can clearly win there because I want the highest level possible. And let's face it, and this is no shade at Ole Miss. LSU is just a slightly higher level. It used to be way higher in the pre NIL. It's still higher, and I just think he wanted to test himself. No different than when Brian Kelly left from Notre Dame, and he failed. But I'll always respect a guy for getting up to bat and taking a swing, even if it was ugly, and we can debate that all day long. You could argue everyone's shitting on Lane. What about LSU? It's like they don't care about their business partner, Ole Miss. They don't care at all. Like they don't bear any responsibility in this. I think it's all just very complicated. Obviously, I do not feel like Lane is the victim at all. Him playing that card is a little egregious, but I do think like tough situation. It's not as black and white as everyone's making it out to be. Playing a little Monday morning quarterback. How crazy would it have been for the Lions to trade Dan Campbell and promote Ben to head coach? Obviously, he wouldn't have ever been a thought, but what do you think the Lions could have gotten in return for Dan Campbell in a trade? I think it's always easy to play this game. I think they played it in New York with Sean Payton. Uh, I think they play or in Dallas with Sean Payton. I think Dallas has done this before with some of the coaches they let out the door. Sean Payton, Dan Campbell. Look at Washington when that picture comes up of like Kyle and Sean McVay. I think sometimes when it's no different than your parents always look at you like their child, and sometimes you have to leave the nest to kind of earn your true respect, right? There's something powerful about leaving the house at 17, 18, 19 years old and going to do your own thing and proving it to yourself, to them, to whoever. No different than someone that gives you, your first internship out of college. Most people don't take their first internship and then go become the CEO. Start in the mailroom and work their way up. There are stories of that, but the majority of it are guys that have to go, stepping stone jump to somewhere else because they use that position to gain more leverage. And like, listen, I think Dan Campbell and I think Ben Johnson be the first to tell you this. His leadership and his toughness, we would never have got to where we got through the mud in the 3-13 season, and even that next season. I think they went 9-7 that year that they beat Rodgers at the end of the season and knocked them out of the playoffs without him. Like I don't know if Ben would have been capable to do that a couple years ago. Now, if you give them both equal teams, like if I give them the Lions, I give them the Bears, I give them the Packers, if all things are equal, would you take Ben Johnson? Like Steve Kerr, would he be equipped to take some shitty NBA team and build them up to like a 7 seed? I don't think so. Would Phil Jackson be equipped? No. But those guys can really handle stars. They're equipped to do that. Steve Kerr's been around Michael Jordan and Tim Duncan, right? Steve Kerr called for the ball from Michael in his heyday. That takes some balls. He's comfortable being around, like no different Joe Torre being around dude on the Yankees. Not everyone can handle being manager of the Yankees. Even if you're though the manager of the Tampa Bay Rays, you can win more games. A little bit easier. Less people are watching you. A little less media scrutiny. A lot less people in the stands. You get to fly under the radar. So I think Ben Johnson, I do think I'd be stunned if he didn't admit this, that he learned a lot about leadership and just like mental toughness from watching the way Dan handled that. Now, I don't think it's really arguable. Ben is an elite schemer. And if you had to have a guy scheme you a game plan on a given week, I think Ben is immediately elevated near the top of the league. And that's really impressive to do. But yeah, I mean, if you could have over the next month, who would you rather have calling the plays, Ben Johnson or Dan Campbell for the Lions? You'd take Ben Johnson. I think I think the New York Giants would give up a first round pick for Dan Campbell. Pretty sure Dan Campbell. Did he play for the New York Giants? Pretty sure he did. God, he had great hair. Yeah, he played for the Giants for a couple years. He has great hair, and I always notice it on TV. He's obviously he's been good whenever depending on how my four box is set up, I don't always listen to him, but JJ Watt's pretty good. He has just elite hair. I'm jealous of that flow. Someone that has no hair. No one in my family does though. My brother, I'm actually going to dinner with him Monday night before the Monday night game. He's got no hair as well. We're bald as a bat. Luckily for our kids, it's on our wives' side, who both sides have hair. But God, we're bald in my family. Question. I'm a Tampa fan and hated how Liam Coen went about things. But how much do you think Jason Light maybe regrets not keeping him and moving off Todd? Especially since our defense looks inept at the moment. I suppose it's easy to say it now, but we did look considerably better with Coen on the staff. I think it's always easy to play Monday morning quarterback, right? You have your reasons and you make your decisions, and this is not one of those where you dump her and then you look on Instagram 3 years later and she just looks like a dime and she's married to a guy who's way richer than you and her life looks way sweeter, right? This is one of those situations where it's pretty hard when you're winning to fire your head coach. Even if like you take a step back and you go, yeah, who would be the better hire for the next 10 years? I bet Jason Light would have admitted over a beer that, like, yeah, it's probably Liam Coen. But what am I going to do? Fire Todd Bowles? And you'd be like, well, sometimes the leader, you got to make tough decisions. It literally never happens. I do not remember a situation where it's like, he got us out of the mud, he got us going in the right direction, but we're going to trade Dan Campbell for Ben Johnson. Listen, I know Todd has done just an impressive job. He has kept the ship going in the right direction. He's taken us to the playoffs post Tom Brady. But we got to fire him and go with Liam Coen, who has been an offensive coordinator for one season. Yes, I think if you could, you would. I just don't think it's very possible to do that. I don't think it's realistic. Let me tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, Gametime. Do you want to go to an NFL game? If you do, I got you covered. They have tickets to every single event. Even if you want to go to a concert, a comedy show, you name it, they got you covered. They have football tickets as low as $100. There are no added fees, so the price you see when you type in, okay, I'm going to go to the Niners Seahawks game. I'm going to go to the Cowboys Commander game. You type in, you see where you want to sit. The price that you see is the price that you will pay it at checkout. There are no added fees. Doesn't get any easier to use. Cannot recommend the app enough. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets, professional football tickets, with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Gametime app today. Aren't 95% of Division I college football jobs just stepping stones? Not destination schools? Isn't that the real reason Ole Miss fans are so salty? Not so much that they lost their coach, but that the last couple of years they had the best feeling themselves thinking they were Bama, LSU, Georgia tier program. And Kiffin leaving for LSU kind of gave them a double dose of reality that they are not a top tier destination school. So I think sometimes getting humbled in life can be just a great reminder for us all. And I think it's really difficult. I think it's easy to understand, in football, it's like, hey, in college, historically, when a program would lose another coach or lose a coach to another school, it would be, well, they've doubled his salary. You'd be like, well, what are we going to do? Like, what are we going to do? Right? Even now, if you lose a recruit, it's like, well, we offered him $400,000 and the other school offered him $900,000. It wasn't my shitty recruiting. It's like easy to justify it. And then every once in a while, it's like, no, this is just kind of who you are, right? You are, this is the greatest 3-year stretch in the history of the school. 10 wins, 11 wins. I think Lane Kiffin said this. 11 wins is the most regular season wins by Mississippi or Mississippi State in the history of either program. Think how many times Bama went undefeated. LSU's their national championship with Joe Burrow, they were undefeated. So I think the dose of reality hurts, but I think where it hurts now, it's like, well, we could offer the same amount of money. We've been giving him huge money for recruits. Like, it's literally not for the money. And it's kind of not as much this time. It's just because through his lens, and he told you this, through his actions, I don't give a shit what he tells Marty Smith, what he tells McAfee, what he'll ever say moving forward at a press conference. He told you with his actions, and let's face it, he'd committed to going to LSU weeks ago. You could argue he committed the moment he sent his wife and his kids to go check out Florida and Baton Rouge. And I do think, they just hired Dave Caldwell, the former Jags GM at Florida, from the Eagles, that Lane was never going to have a GM forced on him. He has too much leverage. So I've been read some articles and some different people that cover their tweets that thought that was an area that made him uncomfortable. Because in the pros, it happens sometimes, right? You got to work with this GM. Lane ain't working with anybody he doesn't want to work with, right? So if he's going to work with somebody, it's going to be because he's choosing to work with that guy. And I do wonder if, like, Florida was already kind of out, and Jimmy, who's no dummy as a businessman, was like, hey, send them there, use a little leverage, and we'll get more money. But the moment Lane sent his family on the fact-gathering information trip, he gone. I mean, he gone. And at that moment, every Ole Miss fan kind of knew. Like, we're getting played a little bit. And he's such a good coach, and they beat the shit out of Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. It's no different than if you're getting a divorce or you're breaking up and the relationship's going to end. We've all been to that position where it's inevitable. It's going to end. But then you just have a night where you maybe go get some cocktails and then, spend the night together and the sparks are flying, maybe even again in the morning. You're like, God, this is good. But deep down, it's over. And that's what I think sucks about the situation is, like, everyone kind of knew it was over a couple weeks ago. And then you played that game and Lane was smiling. But even the way that he attacked that dude that said, called him, you can't make a hoe a housewife. When everyone acknowledges that analogy's perfect, and I even saw that guy say that Lane called him and apologized. I think sometimes we snap back when we know what you say to us is true. Like, Lane's like, I'm sober now. I'm not sleeping around. I'm back with my wife. You call me a hoe. Like, that kind of struck a nerve. Even though he wasn't even talking about your sexual proclivities out in the town. He's talking about your ability to just jump around. You just go to a lot of places. Naturally, most coaches do. But Lane does a lot more than most. Okay, a couple more. Watching the Sunday night game has me questioning Sean Payton. He turned that franchise around, but his play calling is dreadful. He makes Andy Reid look like a run-heavy coach, except Sean doesn't have Mahomes under center. I know Coward loves him, but tell me I'm not crazy to think he's a bit overrated. Side note, these officials have been awful. Another side note, Marcus Mariota Collinsworth is awesome. I don't know why Collinsworth couldn't just call him his name that we all call him, Mariota. I was actually thinking about this morning because I nitpick Bo Nix, but what was the Broncos' record post Peyton Manning? Like, if you go back to just when Fangio took over so if we go Kubiak, the end of Kubiak, 5-11, and then you just start in 2018 when it was Vance Joseph, 6-10, 7-9, 5-11, 7-10, 5-12, 8-9, Peyton's first year. So think about that. From Peyton Manning's Super Bowl win, the following year, 9-7, 5-11, 6-10, 7-9, 5-11, 7-10, 5-12. They had seen some hard times. Sean gets there 8-9. Last year, playoffs 10-7. This year, they're 10-2, tied with the Patriots for the best record in the league. I think he's pretty good. I think he's got the thing's a little weird with the quarterback, but 10-2 is 10-2. Hear me out. I'm 25, about to be 26. Played JV and varsity sports. Graduated high school. Applied to, got into, and graduated from college with a 4-year degree. Started a career in aerospace. Smart guy. Got engaged, planned a wedding, and got married. Got my first dog. Bought my first car. Lived in quote, four different cities. All since the Steelers have won their last playoff game. I have been waiting to see an end to Tomlin's time in Pittsburgh since I was in college. So it feels validating to hear people I respect so much like you saying it as well. Say what you want about him as a coach, but Tomlin, the staff builder, is not someone I want in charge of the future of my team moving forward. With all that said, my question is this: with the benefit of hindsight, how good of a coach is Mike Tomlin really? The Steelers' defense of the past were good, but that was with Dick LeBeau, who was a legend and a coward guy. I think we're going to find out how good Mike Tomlin is when he's the coach of the New York Giants next season, when he's the coach of the Miami Dolphins in 2 years, when he's a coach somewhere else. It's not as easy, and it's kind of on him. Like after a while, people question Andy in Philadelphia, and they say, okay, I'll go to the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the number one overall draft pick, who just had a linebacker shoot his fiance and then blow his head off in the parking lot. The franchise was in shambles. Andy gets there, brings in Dorsey, brings Veach, brings in, Nagy and Doug Peterson, all those guys. Immediately they're in the playoffs. 5-6 years later, they got Patrick Mahomes. They become a dynasty. And all they've done is won. And now no one can dispute like Andy's elite. Sean Payton took over the Saints, who were a joke, won a Super Bowl, won a lot. It's like, okay, you got Drew Brees. Good luck, Denver. Okay. 8-9, 10-7, now we're 10-2. And we got a month to be the number one seed with an elite defense. And we feel pretty good if we're the one seed. At minimum, we'll be in the conference championship game. So I think you really prove your worth and really earn your respect the second place. Like, it's like, how good is Mike Vrabel? Well, actually, I actually think it's more impressive what he did in Tennessee, watching Tennessee now and what a disaster that organization is. And then you watch him go to New England, a place that had been a joke, and immediately turn them down. So I do think Mike Tomlin's kind of legend and his validation, if he goes to the Dolphins and all of a sudden they're just good every year, he's going to get a lot of respect. Because I do think the stars dimmed, and a lot of people question it, rightfully so. You haven't won a playoff game in a decade. Your team now just sucks. He's definitely going to have a spotlight on him wherever he goes. And I think he'll be at another organization either this year or next. Okay, last question. This is from Eli. After the huge win against the Rams, and with all the Bryce Young love, honest opinion, hate, who knows what can I expect for my Panthers finishing off the season? We have the Buccaneers 2 more times, Seattle once, and the Saints again. Our run game this past week looked great, splitting the carries between Hubbard and Dowdle. And our defense the past 2 weeks against the Niners and the Rams looks like a top 5 unit. I know we're not going to go to the Super Bowl, but what's your honest opinion? Well, let's bring up Carolina, let's go conference. They are currently the 10th seed. So the Cowboys are above them, the Lions are above them, and then the Niners are several games above them and beat them straight up. So if you go to Carolina, like you said, they play the Bucks twice. They get the Bucks at home this week, which is a massive game. If you lose to the Bucks and you go to 7-7 and they go to 8-5, I do think you would be in major trouble, given that you would have multiple losses. They beat you head up. In their schedule, it's not exactly murderer's row. So the Buccaneers, I guess they play you. So the Bucks have the Saints, the Falcons, at Panthers, the Dolphins, and then the Panthers. What schedule was I looking at? I don't know what I did there. I don't think you're making the playoffs. I think Tampa's schedule is too easy. And if they just split with you, I think the big question mark is Bryce Young this offseason, if you go 8-9 or 9-8 and you miss the playoffs, is that an auto you not picking up his uh, fifth year option? Like, is he getting his fifth year option picked up? There's my roof. I don't know. I would say right now, no. But he has more games like yesterday where he's going 15 to 20, throwing a couple touchdowns. Actually, I think he threw 3 touchdowns yesterday. What was he yesterday? Yeah, 15 to 20 for 3 touchdowns. It's amazing what a running game will do for a young quarterback. It's kind of important. So if I would have told you at the beginning of the season that starting in December, you would control your own destiny to make the playoffs against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and have a home playoff game, you would have 100% signed up for that. So you could argue that the season has already been a win.